have you. It'll happen.
I call the April 2nd, 2024 meeting of the Legislative Commission on Pensions and Retirement to order. A quorum is present. The first item on our agenda is approval of the meeting minutes. We do have two of them. The first one is from March 18th, and the other is from March 25th, 2024. Representative Berg, have you had a chance to review the minutes, and would you like to move them?
Yes, I am working on that currently. Yes, I move the approval of both of the minutes.
Representative Berg moves approval of the March 18th and March 25th, 2024 meeting minutes. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion does prevail and the minutes are adopted. We have a lot on our agenda today, everyone, so so thank you for all in advance for your patience as we get through all these bills because they are very important and we have a lot of people here with us, so thank you all for joining us today. The first bill on our agenda is Senate File 5197, allowing public employees on immigration visas to purchase service credit within the MSRS General Plan. Senator Pappas is the author of the bill on the House side, and I'm going to wait for her to get settled in to move the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Senate File 5197 extends the authority that we granted in the 2021 bill to H-1B and other visa holders to allow them to purchase service credit. And the University of Minnesota is requesting this amendment so they can bring in others that missed the opportunity to purchase service when the language was amended in 2021. And I hope that Chris Ann McMahon is here, the retirement programs manager from the U of M. Yay. All right. And I think that staff can explain this more succinctly than I could.
And before we have Executive Director Linczewski explain it, Senator Pappas, would you like to move the bill?
Yes, Madam Chair, I would move that Senate File number 5197 be recommended to be laid over, or not recommended, be laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus pension bill.
So Senator Pappas, I'm just going to amend your motion just a little bit. So we're we're moving to the House File 5197 be recommended to pass and be incorporated into the omnibus pension. Senate File 5197 be recommended to pass and be incorporated into the omnibus pension and retirement bill. So not to lay it over, but to actually pass it.
Okay, thank you.
And to Director Linczewski, if you can explain the bill.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Herr. As Senator Pappas mentioned, this is extending authorization passed in 2021. In your materials, we included a copy of the 2021 session law and the 2021 staff summary, if you'd like to understand the background behind this a little bit better. As noted, in 2021, the Commission considered this issue and recommended passage of a bill, which was subsequently enacted as part of that year's omnibus pension bill. The bill in 2021 accomplished three things. It revised the membership requirements for MSRS General Plan to permit visa holders to participate in the plan immediately rather than having to sit out for the first 3 years of employment. It clarified similar provisions in PERA General, and it added the session law. And the session law authorized employees affected by the 3-year delay in plan membership to purchase credit for this period of excluded service by paying employee contributions. Once they had paid the employee contributions, the employer would pay the employer contributions, and these are the contributions that would have had to have been made for the 3 years that they were excluded. This payment had to be, the payment of the employee contributions had to have been made by August 31 of 2021. The university employs many faculty and staff through the H-1B and similar visa programs. After the 2021 bill was enacted, the U's HR office contacted 12 employees who had been excluded from participation during their first 3 years of employment. 2 of these employees made the purchase. Since then, the U has identified an additional employee who's employed on an H-1B visa who had been excluded back prior to the time that the MSRS General Plan statutes were amended. The U believes that there may be others identified in the future. The bill in front of you now reinstates the authority to purchase service credit for this past service. This authority continues indefinitely. There are a few minor changes between the program in 2021 and what is in the bill. One change is that the employee has the right to purchase past service credit only if the employer notifies the employee of the excluded period of employment. With that information, the employee then follows up with MSRS to get a calculation of the missed employee contributions, and then the employee needs to make that payment in order to go through with the purchase. The rest of the program is very similar to 2021. The bill is effective the day following final enactment. That's my overview.
Thank you, Director Lynchesky, and I do understand that we have two testifiers, and we'll go ahead and let Ms. Chrisanne McMahon, Retirement Programs Manager, Human Resources, University of Minnesota, go first, and then after that will be Aaron Leonard, Executive Director of Minnesota State Retirement Systems. Please identify yourself for the record and begin.
I'm Chrisanne McMahon. Thank you, Madam Chair. I am the, thank you. Okay. I am the Program Manager of Retirement Plans at the University of Minnesota. And as was stated, we did request this amendment because we did realize after the 2021 amendment, we had one employee come forward, and we're going to look through our records to ensure if there's any others that need to be corrected, that missed service prior to the 12-month look back. So we had the 12-month look back in the 2021 bill. And this employee was participating in MRS in 2021, 2020, 2019, so did not show up on our reports, but has some earliest service that we would like to give him the opportunity to purchase those service credits that were missed. So we appreciate this bill being brought forward.
Thank you, Ms. McMahon. And Ms. Leonard?
Good evening, Madam Chair and members. Aaron Leonard, Executive Director of the Minnesota State Retirement System. Staff summarized the bill very well. In 2021, MSRS supported the change to update the statutes to comply with federal immigration law. Additionally, we did not oppose the session law that allowed individuals that are now covered by the general plan to purchase past service within a deadline. We want to ensure compliance with federal law moving forward. However, MSRS has some concerns with Senate File 5197 for the following reasons. The process to allow purchase of past service relies on the employer to identify individuals that may have been missed in the past and to notify the employee. So sometimes records from employers aren't complete, and so that is a bit of a risk to the plan. If someone's missed, it may take years to identify the error, and the payments required under the section may not cover the actual present value cost of the benefit. If the cost of the benefit is not covered, the plan is absorbing the cost for the individual. And finally, there's no deadline or end date to this provision. Generally, we prefer a deadline or end date to purchase provisions to minimize the potential cost of the plan. For example, plan coverage errors are only adjusted for the current year and 2 prior fiscal years. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'd answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public who are here who would like to testify on this bill? If not, we'll move to member questions. Members, any questions? Seeing no member discussion, Senator Pappas, any closing remarks?
Madam Chair, just that these are very valuable employees that are really important to the University of Minnesota and to our economy. And I don't really have any response to what Ms. Leonard said. And I don't know if Ms. McMahon might want to make some additional comments as to why we didn't follow her request.
Ms. McMahon.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Pappas. I would just like to add that at the time that, for the earlier service before the amendment in 2021, we were following the state regulations and legislation, and we did for the 2021 as well. And I understand Aaron's concern around the deadline and not an end date, but I think that it is going to be we'll do a thorough review to look for, we have to manually look through our visa records to be sure, and we'll manually do that, and we'll make a very, very thorough attempt to find everyone that is missed now that this legislation is passed. But we have followed all the previous legislation, and I just want to point that out. So.
Thank you for that. And I guess I just, as I'm listening to some of this conversation, I just want to make sure that the concern of that when something just stays open indefinitely, I think that can lead to maybe inability to anticipate issues in the future for the people managing. And so we will, as a, staff and group, have a discussion about this. And Senator Pappas, if you're not opposed to that, we will actually maybe look back with you.
Yeah, Madam Chair, that was why I made the motion to lay it over for possible consideration, because I knew there was this disagreement between the university and with Ms. Leonard.
Thank you, Senator Pappas. Then Senator Pappas, maybe I'll let you renew your motion then, because then, do I have to remove the motion that I made in order for her to renew her, to make another motion?
I'll withdraw my motion, Madam Chair, that you made for me, and go back to my original motion with to have the bill, Senate File 5197, laid over for possible inclusion.
Thank you, Senator Pappas. So withdraw the amendment to pass it and to replace that with laying it over. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. And the motion does prevail, and the bill is laid over. Okay. Yes, yes. Our next bill on the agenda is House File 4358 from Representative Brand and Senate File 5288 from Vice Chair Frentz on position eligibility for the MSRS Correctional. Welcome to the Commission, Representative Brand and Senator Frentz, or Vice Chair Frentz. And Vice Chair Frentz, since you are a member of our commission, if you want to move the bill?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members. I move that Senate File 5288, House File 4358 be considered and laid over for possible inclusion. Is that the plan here?
He said 52, it's 53, or 43, 58. That's House File.
We have it done. Let me just take it.
You're right, he's right.
Is he right?
Yeah, he's right. I was looking at the House File.
Okay. Boy, we're like all over the place today. All right, so Senator Frentz moves his bill, and
So he moved to later.
right.
We have it here to be incorporated.
Sounds good.
It just means you have to address it.
Okay, okay. Apologies on that. We're just doing some logistical things up here to make sure we have the bill the way it needs to go into the omnibus when we're considering it. So thank you so much. And so Vice Chair Frentz and Representative Brand, I understand there is a 1A amendment. Do you want to do the amendments before we go into the bill then? All right, and do you want to offer the 1A and tell us a little bit about the 1A amendment?
I'm going to have Representative Brand offer the 1A, Madam Chair. He came all this way.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, the A1 amendment is basically a clerical fix to the bill. And what it does is it deletes a provision from the bill, page 2, lines 3 through 5, that require employees working as a group supervisor or group supervisor assistant in order to be eligible for the MSRS Correctional to spend at least 75% of the employee's working time in direct contact with patients, as certified by the Commissioner of Human Services. As amended, any group supervisor or group supervisor's assistant working for DHS at a forensic service program or the MSOP that is not currently covered by MSRP Correctional, or MSRS Correctional rather, would become a member of the plan regardless of the employee's level of direct contact with patients or inmates.
Thank you, Representative Brand. And Deputy Director Kelly, is there any additional information about the 1A that you need to add to Representative Brand's?
No, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. So then with that, all those in favor of adopting the 1A amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those, oh, you're right, okay, discussion, Representative Nadeau.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I'm just confused on the A1. On 1.3 of the A1, it says page 2, delete lines 3 to 5. And am I missing something? I don't recognize this, but 2.3 to 2.5 eliminates the requirement for 75% of the employee's working time. Am I reading this wrong?
Nope. That's exactly.
Representative Brand.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Representative Nadeau. No, that's exactly what I was stating.
Okay.
Representative Nadeau.
And thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Brand, thank you for bringing this, but why, I'm curious as to why, this is pretty much standard for, you know, these plans. They spend a significant amount of time working alongside members that they're in this particular thing for these qualifying jobs. Why are you carving this requirement out for this population?
Representative Brand.
Again, this is a clerical error, and so, the amendment actually allows that any group supervisor or group supervisor assistant, that is not currently covered by MSRS Correctional would become a member of the plan, and so this allows more people into the plan.
Representative Nadeau.
So you're not, and Representative Brand, thank you. So is the requirement that in order to qualify for this plan, do the group supervisor, supervisor assistant, do they still have to have direct connection with this population 75% of the time?
Representative Brand.
Madam Chair, Representative Doe, yes.
Okay,
That's correct.
thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any further discussion on the 1A amendment? If not, all those in favor of adopting it, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion is approved and the amendment is adopted. Back to the bill as amended. Do you want to have any opening statements or remarks before we move into our testifiers?
Not really, Madam Chair. Members, this is another one of our attempts to make sure that we properly classify the corrections plan and include those Minnesotans who do qualify to be included in it.
All right, thank you so much. And so we have a couple of testifiers. The first is Ms. Erin Leonard, Executive Director of MSRS. And after that will be Clayton Deal, St. Peter's Treatment Center, Middle Management Associate Vice President. Oh, actually, if you're already there, why don't you go ahead and go first? Just identify yourself for the record and begin your testimony, and then we'll have Ms. Leonard go after that.
Good evening, Madam Chair, committee members. My name is Clayton Deal. I am the local St. Peter MMA Vice President. So I'm here in support of this bill. Currently in the state, in the Department of Corrections, the chain, the correction officers 1 through 3, and then the 3 levels of supervision above that, all are under this bill at the top, as we are asking for MSOP and forensics to follow with that equality. We're looking for the equality piece, as we do serve difficult population. So currently, just like the Department of Corrections, the immediate supervisor change jumps in and handles every challenging part of patient and client interactions. So when there's a crisis or an ICS that's going off, we are part of it. So a lot of things that we do, we spend our time with patients, with clients, our supervisors do, making sure that they're building rapport, learning about the patient's lives, learning about the client's days as well. Part of this is that their day is spent mostly with patients and with clients. But however, because it's not really spelled out, the same way that it is for supervisors in the DOC, we're looking for that kind of, that equity to be matched. A lot of our supervisors are worried that the tasks that they take on that are outside of patient care, meetings or extra time spending, to make the facility better for senior management is instills some worries that they may not be hitting that 75% that a lot of people are worried about hitting. So we know that, that DHS is not gonna come in and say, oh, you're a minute under that 75% of your day. That's not the worry, but it's still making sure that we're taking care of our supervisors. So that's why I really believe that this needs to be put through because of the equity between all these programs. I really urge you guys and the committee and Madam Chair to support this bill. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Next is Ms. Erin Leonard, Executive Director of MSRS.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members, Erin Leonard, MSRS. House File 4358 makes 2 modifications to the positions covered by the MSRS Correctional Plan. The bill adds the position of registered nurse supervisor to the list of covered positions. This would have to meet the 75% contact with clients or patients. It's our understanding that there are 15 individuals that would be potentially covered in this job classification. Assuming the agency certifies the incumbent meets the 75% contact requirement, we don't have any concerns about that classification. The bill also moves the positions of group supervisor and group supervisor assistant from the list that requires the certification of 75% contact with patients or clients to the group that is automatically covered by the correctional plan. So since 1996, there have been 8 positions that are automatically covered. Those haven't changed since 1996. In 2006, the corrections canine was added, and there hasn't been anything added since. So this would be a change, somewhat unusual, not our standard each year, to move that from one list, these two classifications, to move them from one list to the other list. As noted in the staff memo, the bill does not include a provision to purchase past service. So just so folks are aware of that, a lot of times these come forward and they allow the past service purchase. Generally, if there is a cost to purchase past service and switch it from the general plan to correctional, it's an average employee cost of $11,000 and an employer cost of about $30,000 per person. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Leonard. If you could just stay up there in case there are questions. Members, any questions or comments? Senator Howe.
Thank you, and Ms. Leonard, would that mean that when they do retire, they get a combined retirement instead of getting just the correctional retirement? And if that's the case, then do they still retire at 55, but they would get a mixed, combined, or coordinated retirement?
Ms. Leonard.
Madam Chair, Senator Howe, yes. So if they have a mix of general plan and correctional plan, they can still retire at 55, but their general plan benefit would be reduced fairly significantly. So sometimes folks wait a little longer to make it less severe in that reduction.
Senator Howe, you follow up? Further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, Senator Frentz and Representative Brand, please make your closing comments and renew your motion.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair and members. As mentioned at the outset, we're simply trying to provide some equity amongst these provisions. I appreciate Ms. Leonard pointing out that these changes to move the categories are not common, and our ask of you is to consider the bill for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Brand?
Yep, again, this position listed, it's about equity, it's about additional equity in the eligibility requirements. And so we're talking about security counselors, we're talking about security counselor leads, and we're talking about the leadership chain. So thank you for your time today, and I look forward to having the bill pass and hopefully be included in the omnibus bill.
Thank you, Representative Brand. And Senator Frentz, Vice Chair Frentz, I'm just going to, maybe if you could renew the motion and then state it as amended, just to make sure that we have that on record.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I move that Senate file, put it away already, 5288, House file 4358, be laid on the table for possible inclusion as amended, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Frentz. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. The motion does prevail, and House file 4358, Senate file 5288 is amended. As amended, is recommended to, is laid over and is incorporated into the omnibus for possible inclusion.
This is a lot of mouthful.
And because the motion is different. Yeah. Yes. Our next bill on the agenda is House File 4666 from Representative Wolgamott and Senate File 4878 from Vice Chair Frentz on adjusting the PERA Police and Fire Plans COLA timeline and adjustment. I'm sure the two of you are arguing who gets to move the bill, right?
As a matter of fact.
Thank you both for being here today. And if you, Vice Chair Frentz or Representative Wolgamott, if you want to move the bill and provide some opening remarks.
Go ahead, Representative.
Madam Chair, I move that we lay over House File 4666 and Senate File 4878 for inclusion in our omnibus bill.
Thank you. And I will have nonpartisan staff explain the details of the bill, and that will be Deputy Director Sean Kelly.
Thank you, Chair Herr. My name is Sean Kelly. I'm the Deputy Director for the Commission. The bill changes the method for calculating post-retirement adjustments, which are also called the cost of living adjustments or COLAs, under the PERA Police and Fire Plan, from a fixed rate adjustment of 1% to a variable rate adjustment that is linked to the post-retirement adjustment for Social Security benefits with a minimum of 1% and a maximum of 1.5%. The bill also decreases the waiting period to be eligible for a full post-retirement adjustment from 36 months to 12 months. The bill aligns post-retirement adjustments under PERA P&F with post-retirement adjustments under PERA General. Under current law, retirees of PERA P&F are eligible for an annual 1% COLA after a waiting period. Retirees are first eligible for a partial COLA after 25 months of receiving annuity payments and are eligible for the full COLA after 36 months. The COLA is effective as of January 1st, and the number of monthly payments is determined as of the preceding June 30th. The partial COLA is 1/12 of 1% for each month the member was receiving payments during the year that the benefit was effective as of June 30th. The bill has one section and makes two main changes. The first change is that the bill uses a new method for determining post-retirement adjustments for PERA P&F. Under the bill, the COLA for PERA P&F is 1% unless the Social Security COLA is greater than 2%, in which case the COLA is 50% of the Social Security COLA, not to exceed 1.5%. The second change is that the waiting period for a retiree or benefit recipient to receive a full COLA is reduced from 36 to 12 months. In addition, the waiting period for a partial COLA is reduced from 25 months to 1 month. The formula for determining the partial COLA is modified as a result. The bill is effective for post-retirement adjustments beginning on or after January 1st, 2025. I will note that in the staff summary has information from Doug Anderson, Executive Director of PERA, on the cost of the bill. The staff summary also includes two charts. The first chart shows the impact of the shortened waiting period and the increased COLA on the annuity amount for a hypothetical starting to receive payments in March 2025. The second chart shows the annual COLA for PERA General compared to the COLA for Social Security benefits since 2019, which demonstrates how the COLA for PERA P&F may fluctuate from year to year. Thank you, Chair Hurd. That concludes my review.
Thank you, Deputy Director Kelly. And we do have a couple of testifiers here today. And so the first to testify is Doug Anderson, Executive Director of PERA. Please identify yourself for the record and begin.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commission members. I'm Doug Anderson, Executive Director for the Public Employee Retirement Association. The PERA Board does support the increases outlined in this bill, predicated that the cost of the benefit increases are fully funded. The Board has identified improving inflation protection for current and future retirees as a top priority for members of this plan, as well as PERA's other plans. The Board appreciates that the stakeholder-initiated bill includes PERA's suggested approach to tie increases directly to an inflation measurement. However, full funding of these benefits is critically important because the plan is not in a good position to absorb these costs. In this case, full funding means annual payments starting at about $40 million per year and increasing at an assumed total payroll growth of 3% for the remainder of the 25-year amortization period. That would mean annual payments starting at $40 million and growing to $80 million a year. Alternatively, the cost could be expressed as a one-time payment of about $500 million. Thank you for hearing my testimony, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Up next is Captain Scott Vadnais, Minnesota Professional Firefighter President. Welcome, Mr. Vadnais. Please identify yourself for the record and begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. My name is Scott Vadnais. I'm President of the Minnesota Professional Firefighters. I'm here to support House File 466 and Senate File 4878. I want to thank our chief authors, Representative Wolgamott, Senator Frentz. Minnesota firefighters, paramedics, and police officers desperately need your help. Our retired members are in trouble due to the unfair COLA system we are held to. I humbly ask that we be given the same COLA and wait period that every other member of PERA gets. It is no secret that we have seen significant spike in inflation. Any member who is retired in 2021 saw an inflation rate of 17% and no COLA for up to 3 years. Many received their first COLA in 2024, and it was 1%. So before they received their first COLA, they saw a 17% reduction in their buying power. This is not even considered that they must purchase their own health care insurance because we do not qualify for Medicare until the age of 65. For many members who are eligible for Medicare, that cost has gone up to the point that Social Security saw double-digit increases in that same period to combat inflation and rising healthcare costs, and we do not receive Social Security. Our retirees are locked in at 1% after retirement and sometimes must wait up to 3 years to get it. In 2021, the LCPR completed a study that assumed that inflation would be 2.5%. It concluded that the retirees would see a 30% reduction in the value of their pension with a 1% COLA per year after 20 years. If done today, our calculations of that same study are conservative at 40% reduction after 20 years. I've thrown out a lot of numbers, and I want you to remember this one word, and that's parity. We are asking for parity with every other PERA plan. That is all. We're not looking for anything more than what any other plan receives. All other PERA plans get up to a 1.5% COLA and only have to wait a year for their first COLA. We were at the table in 2010, 2013, and 2018 when there were shared sacrifices. Our leadership did what was right for the fund. We made cuts and increased early retirement offsets to 5% per year before the age of 55. We increased the time before you could become fully vested from 10 years to 20 years. And we increased the employee contribution to its current level, 11.8%. We also capped our COLA at 1% and increased our wait period. Last year, we also agreed to lower the assumed rate of return to 7%. I believe we have shown that we are good stewards of our pension. I could be up here asking for all those items to be changed back to what they were, but I'm not. We want to be treated like every other member of PERA who gets a 1.5% COLA and receives it after a year. We must have parity. On March 14th, the PERA board took the historic step of supporting this bill with a 9-1 vote. We know and do not take lightly that asking for a fiscal note of $40 million is a big ask. But without the $40 million, we will never have parity. In public safety, we have seen unprecedented numbers of our members with PTSD, cancer, and heart disease. The attacks we have seen on police and fire are becoming common. When this happens, all of you support us, and we thank you for that. Today, please show us your support for these bills. We need the state to show gratitude for the men and women who spent their lives on the front line, only to be pushed to the food shelf line because the legislature could not afford to meet its obligations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vadnais. And our last testifier that signed up is Mr. Brian Rice, representing the Minnesota Police Fraternal Association. Please identify yourself for the record and begin.
Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair. I sound worse than I am. My name is Brian Rice. I'm an attorney in Minneapolis. I'm here on behalf of the Minnesota Police Fraternal Association. It's an organization now over 1,000 retired police officers and their surviving spouses. And let me just say this. This pension commission has an awesome responsibility. As you said before, there are 300,000 working Minnesotans whose pensions and livelihoods, retirement security is affected by every action that this commission takes. And out of those 300,000 working Minnesotans, there's 12,500 who are covered by the PERA Police and Fire Plan and the, thank you, Lisa, and the State Highway Patrol Plan. That's 4%. 4% of your employees are in these public safety jobs. And because of history, because these plans existed prior to Social Security, because Minnesota decided not to include these employees in the Social Security Compact, they are not, I'll repeat again, not covered by Social Security. And the implication of that is huge. They have not received, and compliments to Mr. Kelly and the Pension Commission staff for pointing out that Social Security has actually increased 17.8% in the last 3 years to offset these devastating effects of inflation. Some of these police and firefighters received nothing. The bulk of them did receive 1%. That's just a devastating loss that frankly will never be made up. But that was a decision this legislature made, not to join Social Security. And what I submit to this legislature is you have a special obligation, a unique obligation to this class of employees. They're not gonna ever make that loss to Social Security up, and their only recourse, Madam Chair, and I know I sound forceful, you're our friend, everybody in this room has been our friend. We need to talk to the people who are they're not our friends. We need to educate the legislature that this is a dire circumstance. The chart includes an excellent report that Susan and her staff did 4 years ago as an outgrowth of the 18 legislation. This downward trend is there. You know, we're on a path that needs to be remedied somehow. What this bill would do would change that path in a small but very positive way, and it does cost money. But it isn't asking for anything special that you're not giving to these other employees. And we really need it. And I know you know this. We talked about it at the Pension Commission last year. There was some remedial actions. You took a great step by doing a one-time lump sum COLA for these basic employees that are retired that I represent. We also helped with the tax level to equalize the field between the Social Security exemption that was denied them for almost a decade and given to them this last time. But even these employees, and a lot of them are in the room, thank all the firefighters and Tom Thornburg, the International Vice President, the presidents of Minneapolis Union, Mark Lukoski, Michael Smith from St. Paul, and several others. For coming here. But even if these people work Social Security and they have some entitlement, what they find because of federal laws, they'll have the government pension offset, which will take about a third or more of, or 2/3 of their Social Security away, or they'll have the windfall elimination provision, which means their spouses won't get their Social Security when they die. And so they're severely penalized under the federal Social Security Act. And I'll plead until my voice finally gives out that really something needs to be done. We understand that the target that's been given this commission it does not cover this request. We also understand that it's modest. We understand the legislature has some troubles, but I'll just close with this. I had two aunts that were in the MRF system. They were born over 140 years ago. One became the Secretary of the Civil Service Commission, one became the Secretary to the Public Works Commission. They both worked for almost 40 years in the MRF system. They were outside of Social Security. When they retired, they had what was a great pension. They retired in the mid-60s, and then another wave of inflation hit. And by the time they had no Social Security, they worked their whole lives. If they were working now, they'd be running those departments, but they were wiped out by inflation. And they'd have to come every year to this legislature asking for the $2 bill, and the legislature would, on an ad hoc basis, appropriate money. Aunt Franny retired in like 1967, and it was great for a while, and then literally the inflation of the 1970s wiped out her pension. And the legislature made an effort to deal with it, and they did, and it was very good on their part. And just the last aside is that system failed a group of employees so badly that the legislature overaddressed it and came up with a COLA, excess investment return in the 80s and 90s, and we overpaid. So please help. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak to this bill? I do not see anybody, so we'll move to member questions. Members, any questions for Vice Chair Frentz and Representative Wolgamott? Representative O'Driscoll.
Madam Chair, just a clarification on the motion. I thought I heard Representative Wolgamott say that this bill was going to be laid over for inclusion. I think the word we were looking for, possible inclusion. So you may want to clarify that at the time that we are done with conversation here, if that in fact is the motion.
That is, in fact, the motion is for possible inclusion, Representative O'Driscoll. And we'll, when we renew the motion, we'll renew it in the correct form. Senator Nelson.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. My question, well, first of all, I think we must always support those who run into danger to protect us. So that should go without saying. And the parity argument, too, is very clear and needed. But I have one math question and then a follow-up. I'm wondering who might be able to, I see that the annual cost is 40 million for the first year, but it's a 30-year period. In the 30th year, it's 94 million. So who can do that math and tell us what is that total cost during those 30 years? I think that's just an important number to know, and then I'll have another question.
Thank you, and I think Deputy Director Kelly, or Doug's, okay, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson, do you
Madam
need
Chair.
the question repeated, or did you hear the question?
No, I think I have it.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Senator Nelson. So yes, the cost in the first year is $40 million, and it would escalate 3% a year. And I have to say, in the memo set a 30-year period. In our memo, it's really a 25-year period. That's the amortization period for that plan. So it's a 25-year period. That would grow to about 80 million in that period. So the present value of all of those payments, putting it in terms of today's dollars, is close to about $500 million.
Senator Nelson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. That was my question. I think that, it's only right that we know that number. And my question is, what will, and maybe one of our bill authors will want to take this. So let's say that this bill, which is simple parity and giving due honor and respect and financial resources to those who put their lives in danger for us. We never want to forget that. But what would happen if, we have a structural budget deficit of $1.5 billion on the doorstep right now. I want to know if we were to pass the bill that you brought before us today, what would happen if we don't have the 40 million or the 42 million or the 43 million or in the 25th year, the $80 million? What would that do to our retirees, to our heroes?
Vice Chair Frentz?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Nelson. Well, first of all, the legislature would have to make tough choices, which is, I think, what the people expect us to do. Every time we come here, structural deficit, structural sufficiency, they expect us to come in here and present a balanced budget. And in the future years, if we have that issue, we'll have to make cuts if it's a deficit, and we'll have to look the people in the eye and say, here's why we made these choices. But to respond to your question, I'd also point out, I think this is to your point, Senator, the principles of pension policy ask us to keep the buying power of our plan retirees the same. And when we're faced with inflation and these men and women who put themselves in harm's way, and we can see that they're losing ground to inflation, I would say the higher priority is to make a winning decision for them now. And if we face the music fiscally for any one of a number of reasons, education, transportation, health and human services, we'll have to come back in here and look forward to working with you then.
Senator Nelson, any follow-up?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and Senator Frentz. Well, that is, I think that is something real that we have to look at. And I am serious, though, what would happen, though, if the legislature was not able, you can't bind the hands of future legislators. What would happen? Would the members have to, would the cost be shoved onto members then? Maybe, Mr. Anderson, they'd have to increase the member payment? I just need to know what those contingencies are.
Mr. Anderson?
Madam Chair, Senator Nelson, the plan currently has fixed benefits and fixed contributions. So if this was a cost that's not being fulfilled by a portion of the contributions, there's no automatic adjustment to the benefits or the costs. So there need to be a legislative decision about what to do in that instance.
Well, I'm just,
Senator Nelson?
yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm just kind of processing that. So my question is, would we be putting the plans in jeopardy if we don't have a guarantee? And would we be putting the plans and the participants in any type of jeopardy if in fact we supported something that I have no opposition to, except knowing that it's a secure step forward that's not going to either, I don't know how you would, if the plans would become insolvent, if the legislature did not step up, or if members would need to pay more, or if the benefits would be reduced. I just think those are things that have to be understood, what that possibly could look like.
Vice Chair Frentz?
Thank you again, Madam Chair, and thanks, Senator Nelson. I think these are questions we should be asking. I would put it this way. The plans and the men and women that they protect would be in the same type of danger as our teachers, our truck drivers, the men and women that work at the security hospital in St. Peter. We would be faced with a deficit. My freshman year, oh so long ago, they talked about the $5 billion deficit that they had to deal with 5 or 6 years earlier and all the cuts they had to make. And the state would have the responsibility, the legislators would have to decide where those cuts are made, but the plans would be at no greater risk than any of the other budgets that we fund throughout the finance jurisdictions. It's just that we would have to deliver a balanced budget, and they would be subject to some of the same types of challenges that were attempted to be addressed in 2018.
Thank you, Senator Frentz.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any further discussion? Representative Berg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to the authors for bringing this forward, shedding light on an issue that we've struggled with for a while. You know, Representative Wolgamott, you and I have had a lot of conversations about our heroes, our firefighters and police officers recently. And so I just really appreciate sort of the intentional effort to right this wrong. You know, if our firefighters and police officers actually get to retire, because that's a privilege in that profession, that you actually make it to retirement. They deserve what they've earned. They've already put in the struggle. They've already faced the challenges. This is a time for them to get what they earned and be able to live on that. So I just deeply, and I think you understand why from the bottom of my heart, thank you for bringing this forward. It's meaningful to my community. It's something I've heard from my community members and all across the state, the importance of this, and it feels really good to be able to do something about it. So thank you.
Any further discussion? Senator Howe.
You know, having been one that lived through that no COLA for 3 years and then a 1% for the last 10 years. You know, to Senator Nelson's point, you either put it on the backs of your retirees or you put it on the backs of the state. And that's kind of the answer that you have. So right now, for the last 13 years, you put it on the backs of the retirees. And in my opinion, you know, the first thing you should do is, when we do a budget, is take care of your obligations. And I've always been suspect of the way state government does their budgets, because it seems like we fund what we like to and then worry about what we should and have to as an after effect. And that's what we don't do here with our pensions. So that's, for somebody that's lived under this 1% for the last 10 years, that's my opinion.
Thank you, Senator Howe. And Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. And history on this is Representative or Senator Pappas, that we've been here probably on this commission the longest. There were some tough decisions we had to make in the past to make sure these funds were solvent. Unfortunately, some of the times when they've had the most problems, when they've had their deficits, it's when the market's down. At the same time, the state's in a deficit, and some of the times when we need the most money to put in these plans, the state doesn't have them. And so we've made some tough decisions. We've made some cuts to COLAs in the past. And as Mr. Rice talked about, there was times when the market was really going gangbusters, that the previous pension commission and the legislature did things that caused a drain that's continuing on these plans. that's been going forward because of some exorbitant COLAs that were given out to members. And I say this as I support these plans, I support giving the COLAs, and I say that as a person that is collecting a pension that has no COLA, has never had COLAs. And so I understand the idea of shrinking power of that pension. But as members, if we don't have the money to do it, we don't have the money to do it. Again, we have to make sure our state budget is balanced. And unfortunately, sometimes the pension plans in the past have not had a target. The last 2 years, we've gotten a target. That's something fairly rare in the pension world. Oftentimes, we don't get, the pension commission doesn't get appointed till late in session and is an afterthought because they don't have an individual COLA. And so therefore, we can't do the things that we need to do. That money's spent before we get here and say, we need this money for the plans. So members, like I said, we need to keep this in mind as going forward. And we need to make sure that we fight for a COLA going forward in the pension commission so that we can do these things that we need to do to make sure these plans stay solvent and that we are able to do those things because we have a target that we can spend.
Thank you, Representative Nelson. Any further discussion? Thank you, members, for the robust conversation. I know we are all balancing the ensuring we do the right things for our members, but also doing the right things for our state's budget, and it is a tough balance, and I appreciate all of you digging into this. Representative Wolgamott and Vice Chair Frentz, do you have any closing comments before we renew your motion?
Well, Madam Chair and members, thank you for the opportunity to present House File 4666. Our police, officers, and firefighters show up to work every single day, putting them in the front lines of danger and crisis to make sure that we're safe. They don't get to stay home. They don't get to work in front of a computer. They show up every single day. And now is the time that we give them the respect that they deserve by bringing their current COLA in line with the maximum PERA General plan COLA and by reducing the punitive 3-year waiting period. Now is the time to do this, members. Now is the time to do this, Madam Chair. We need to have the backs of the men and women who show up and protect us on the front lines every day. We need to figure out a way to find the money this year and years going forward to enact this Police and Fire Pension Fairness Act into law to support those men and women. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members.
Vice Chair Frentz.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members. The difference between this budget item, to Senator Nelson's question, and many of the budget items is these pensions represent a promise that we make to men and women who keep us safe. These pension obligations are a promise when we hire them, a promise when they go to work every day, and a promise when they get ready to retire. We need to keep that promise. I also want to echo Representative Wolgamott's comments. Each one of us as legislators on the LCPR can go to leadership and say, we're going to need a little help here with some public safety, and I urge each one of you to ask whether that's not really the time to do that right this minute. With that, Madam Chair, I really appreciate the chance to hear the bill. Want to also thank the testifiers and looking forward to further discussion.
Thank you. And I will renew your motion to lay over House File 4666 and Senate File 4878. Just laying it over. No additional comments around that, Representative O'Driscoll. Thank you so much. Our next bill on the agenda is House File 5137 from Representative Wolgamott, creating a reemployment plan for the PERA Police and Fire Plan. Welcome back, Representative Wolgamott. If you want to just, actually, I will move to lay over House File 5137. Representative Wolgamott, if you have any opening remarks.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the Commission, for the opportunity to present House File 5137, which is a bill related to retention of police and firefighters through reemployment. Bring this bill before you, Madam Chair and members, because right now in the state of Minnesota, we are facing a dire law enforcement workforce shortage. And that shortage has a direct impact on our ability to provide safety and security throughout communities in Minnesota. Look at the numbers, Madam Chair. Right now, there are approximately 1,000 open police officer positions in the state of Minnesota. And that problem is only going to get worse. In the immediate future, there will be approximately 2,400 officers who are eligible for retirement in the next 2 years. Again, you think that the workforce shortage is bad now, it's only going to get worse. That's why we have a moral imperative as a commission and as a legislature to do our part to use the tools that are available to us through pensions and do something to address this problem. That's why we're bringing this bill forward. The bill permits members of PERA Police and Fire who are at least 55 years of age to continue to work without a break in service, receive a full salary, and receive a normal retirement annuity without a reduction or suspension. An eligible member may also separate from service, return to covered employment, and continue to receive a normal retirement annuity. This bill, again, by doing that, it will directly address the law enforcement workforce shortage by incentivizing retired police and fire officers to rejoin service without impacting their retirement annuity. So that's why we're bringing this bill forward. That's what the bill does. And Madam Chair, before we get to further testifiers, I do have an amendment that I would like to move.
And thank you, Representative Wolgamott. If you want to move your 2A amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the A2 amendment to House File 5137.
And would you like to talk to this 2A amendment, or would you like the staff to do that, Representative Wolgamott?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can give a brief introduction and then we can defer to staff to fill in. But essentially, as I mentioned, the intent of this legislation is to incentivize police officers, firefighters who hit that retirement age to be able to, without too much burden, be able to continue to work. So what this amendment does is eliminates the need for psych evaluation, background check, other requirements for returning to service if an officer is to retire, then reinstate within a brief period of time.
Thank you, Representative Wolgamott. I'm going to turn it over to LCP, our Deputy Director, Sean Kelly. Is there anything you would like to add to the 2A amendment?
No, thank you, Chair Herr. Given Representative Wolgamott's summary of the bill, I believe that's sufficient, but happy to answer any questions if members have them.
Thank you, Deputy Director Sean Kelly. Discussion on the 2A amendment. Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to clarify, we've also had the State Patrol in earlier, and they were looking at something not quite exactly like this, but something similar to this. And I believe that they would be subject to the same issues that are being addressed in here. Was wondering if they are included or if there's a separate statute that if it is the wishes of the Pension Commission to move forward, that we would have to amend the State Patrol bill to put similar language in, waiving the background checks on the psych evals and the like. Maybe Mr. Kelly might be able to provide some insight on that.
Deputy Director Kelly.
Madam Chair, Representative O'Driscoll, I am not aware of the amendment or the rules that are in the amendment being in the State Patrol bill at this time, but I think that's something that we can certainly look at.
And Representative O'Driscoll, if I come back to you, I think that Director Linczewski actually has some additional comments regarding that.
Thank you, Chair Herr. Representative, I understand the language, there is some desire to attach it to the State Patrol bill as well. There is quite a group of people that are interested in that State Patrol bill, so there would need to be some discussion with those stakeholders. Mike Ledoux comes to mind as one of the people there. So we have not had that discussion. We just got the amendment over the weekend for this bill, but the language that we got was actually for the State Patrol bill and then was revised for this bill. So there seems to be some interest in that, but that stakeholder group is not the same one as the one that's advocating for the State Patrol bill. So be my guest if you'd like to reach out to them. We could do the same amendment for that.
Representative O'Driscoll.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just wanting to make sure that as we're looking for parity among individuals, we've got a group that's employed by the state that's involved in very similar activities of what Representative Wolgamott's bill talks about tonight. And again, to avoid confusion and issues, if this is going to be something that is going to be in an ultimate bill that's going to be enacted into law, we should do it for both groups, because I think that the similarities are just like, if you take a Venn diagram, there's really no Venn diagram, it's circle on circle for the issues we're looking at here. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative O'Driscoll. Any further discussion? Senator Howe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Wolgamott, how would this be for those folks that go back to the same employing organization? Or would this be for anyone, if they leave that organization, go to a different organization and want to continue? My concern is with PTSD and that type of thing that we have out there, are they gonna, is that organization gonna have the background and what is going on with that individual if they go to a different organization?
Representative Wolgamott.
My understanding is that this amendment would apply to everyone that is within the jurisdiction of, or excuse me, within the eligibility of this law, but would defer to our staff for clarification on that.
Representative Wolgamott, just to make sure, because I hear your question, Senator Howe, it's a really good question. I understand though that your bill only pertains if they come back to be reemployed in that position or within that same entity. It's not like they could go get a job at, Target or something, being an executive there. It doesn't cover, this does not cover that. It's just being reemployed back in those positions within the law enforcement entity. Is that correct?
Correct, Madam Chair.
Senator Howe.
But it wouldn't prevent them from leaving Redwood Falls Fire Department and going to Clearwater Fire Department or whatever. And that's my question. Do they have to go back to the same employment organization, the same city, or would they could go anywhere? And I guess that's my concern. I think that is something that should be looked at because you could have someone especially with this, without having a psych eval and that type of thing, you could go elsewhere and you possibly should, if you go to a different employer, have that background done.
I understand that maybe Mr. Doug Anderson or Ms. Amy Stringy could answer the question. Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, Madam Chair, so this bill would apply to everyone, every member of the plan who reaches normal retirement age, that they would be eligible to commence a benefit regardless of future employment.
Mr. Anderson, can you specifically address maybe Senator Howe's question that could they go to another law enforcement agency somewhere else or do they have to come back and return to stay within that agency that they retired from?
So, Madam Chair and Senator Howe, so a member who retires, they could commence a benefit and they can return to work at any agency, whether it's PERA-covered employment or another place.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Senator Howe.
No, that's just the point I was trying to make.
Thank you, Senator Howe. Representative O'Driscoll.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and I think Senator Howe, you have unearthed something that's really worth discussing. And I hear what Mr. Anderson's saying. He's talking about what the bill allows, but it really doesn't address, and we need to look at the idea, like you suggested, from one agency to another on that. Is that going to be necessary? And I'll even put more logs on the fire. What happens if you want to retire from state patrol and you want to go into P&F? What are we going to do there? That's why I was looking for clarity on this and what's in the state patrol plan. That I don't know that we've got all the details worked out in this bill yet that would be necessary to make it practical for use in the state of Minnesota, the way it stands right now, plus what the commission has been previously working on. Because again, some of this might be regional, or someone may want to go to the state patrol that's with an agency or vice versa. And we're seeing that most law enforcement folks, and Director Anderson, correct me if I'm wrong, are done by age 55, whether they're in the state patrol program or whether they're in P&F. That's usually the magic age. But to allow for more robust opportunities for people in this time of shortage, I'd like to make it as equal and accessible for all parties as possible. So that's a little bit of, like I say, a few more logs on the fire.
Thank you. Representative Wolgamott.
Madam Chair, I just want to say thank you to Representative O'Driscoll and Senator Howe for your questions and your input on this. And just clarify that we are, we really want to solve the workforce shortage in law enforcement throughout the state of Minnesota. And we want to try to find solutions so that, if certain departments are hurting in certain spots, that there's that latitude for people to go where they want to go and to go where the need is.
Thank you, Representative Wolgamott. And I just want to remind members that we are still on adopting the 2A amendment. I think we've sort of ventured into having discussion on the bill overall. But why don't we go ahead and just vote on the 2A to get the bill in the form that the author intends, and then we can have further discussion on the bill itself. So all those in favor of adopting the 2A amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? The 2A amendment prevails, and the motion prevails, and the amendment is adopted. And now on to the, well, I guess we haven't even done the testifiers yet, right?
Madam Chair.
So why don't we go ahead and have testifiers speak, and then we'll go back to having a discussion on the bill as amended.
Madam Chair, just a point of parliamentary
Representative
inquiry. Is staff going to set up the bill as well before we take testifiers, or?
We will go ahead and have staff explain the bill in detail. Deputy Director Sean Kelly, if you could go through the bill for us.
Thank you, Chair Herr. The bill permits members of the PERA Police and Fire Plan who are at least age 55 to continue to work in a PERA-covered position without a break in service, receive a full salary, and receive a normal retirement annuity without a reduction or suspension. An eligible member may also separate from service, return to covered employment, and continue to receive a normal retirement annuity. Under current law, if a PERA P&F member retires, starts to receive pension benefits, and returns to work in a PERA-covered position after a break in service, the member's pension benefits may be reduced or suspended. The member's pension benefit is reduced or suspended if the member earns more than the Social Security threshold for reemployment, which is approximately $22,000 in 2024, and the member has not reached Social Security retirement age. The amount that is deferred is held in a deferral account. The member is entitled to a lump sum payment of the amount in the deferral account after the reemployment period ends. The bill has 4 sections which are effective January 1st, 2025. Section 1 adds a definition for annuity starting date to Chapter 353, which means the date that a member first receives an annuity payment from PERA. Section 2 modifies the definition of retirement age for purposes of Section 353.37, which is a section that requires a member's pension benefits to be suspended if the member exceeds the earnings threshold after returning to covered employment. The current definition of retirement age is the Social Security normal retirement age. Section 2 expands this definition to mean age 55 for PERA P&F. Section 3 adds a provision that prohibits PERA from suspending an annuity based on a member's reemployment regardless of the member's income if the member has reached retirement age, which is 55 for PERA P&F. Section 4 adds a new section to Chapter 353, which has 2 subdivisions. Subdivision 1 permits a member of PERA P&F who has not separated from service to receive a normal retirement annuity if the member is at least age 55 and partially or fully vested. Subdivision 2 requires that the member's continued employment does not affect the member's annuity amount. As a result, the member will not continue to receive service or salary credit towards a pension benefit. The member will not continue to make employee contributions, and the employer will not continue to make employer contributions on the member's behalf. According from the PERA staff memo to the Commission dated March 28th, 2024, the bill has a cost to PERA because members are expected to start receiving benefits and stop making contributions to PERA P&F earlier, increasing the plan's liability. Please see the PERA staff memo, which is included in the meeting materials for more information. Thank you, Chair Hurt. That concludes my review.
Thank you, Deputy Director Kelly. We do have testifiers here today. The first person will be Doug Anderson, Executive Director of Public Employee Retirement Association. Mr. Anderson, please identify yourself and begin your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Doug Anderson, Executive Director for PERA. The PERA Board appreciates the concerns about public safety recruitment and retention and acknowledges that pension plans sometimes may be used to help with these efforts. However, in this instance, the Board does not support the provisions of this bill because the cost of the plan is not fully funded. Fully funding the cost of this change would require annual contributions starting at $17 million a year, estimated $17 million a year, and increasing at an assumed total payroll growth of 3% per year for the 25-year amortization, which would double that cost over the period. Alternatively, fully funding the cost up front in one payment would cost about $290 million. The plan is not in a position to absorb these costs. Thank you for hearing my testimony, and I'll stand by for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Our next testifier is Inspector Dave Titus, President of the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association. Welcome to Pensions. Please identify yourself and begin your testimony.
Thank you, Chair and members. I'm a little nervous. I was sitting right next to Brian Rice, and I don't want that bug. You're in trouble. Yeah. My name is Dave Titus. I'm the president of the MPPOA. We are the largest law enforcement association in the state, and I am an inspector for the Ramsey County Sheriff's Office. If you want, I can add clarity to the amendment when I'm done here, if that's the wishes of the chair. Our problem, we have more cops leaving the profession than we have qualified candidates to replace them. Part of our solutions formula for this recruitment and retention crisis is improved pay and benefits. This committee can have a positive impact on the benefits part, the pension. The last 3 sessions, the chiefs, the sheriffs, and the MPPOA have been asked by representatives and senators, what can we do to solve this crisis? Well, it's complicated. But we do believe that a healthy, defined pension with fair COLAs at the end of a successful career in law enforcement will be attractive, continue to be attractive to recruits. Additionally, and specifically related to this bill being discussed now, we believe a reemployment option will have a positive impact on retention of experienced senior officers and hopefully bridge our ranks over this retention and recruitment crisis until permanent solutions are established. This crisis is real, and it's getting worse. We have many cops that are approaching the retirement age. I am one of them. We're at the 30-year mark. Massive classes were hired back in the early 90s, and voila, here we are. I don't know where the time went. But we're getting ready to pull the plug. In a recent survey that went out to 11,000 members, or 11,000 of our members, 80% of those responding stated they would not recommend this profession, one that I hold dearly, to our children. LALS did a study just recently, and it shows since 2013, we've had a decrease in law enforcement graduates in the Minnesota law enforcement programs, 25%. The Post Board shows on their website a drastic reduction in those taking the post exam. In Ramsey County, we had 6 openings. For our general test, the applications. For the 6 openings, we had 30 applicants. That doesn't cut it. Normally, you'd want about 150 for those 6 applicants. In Minneapolis, they're down, depending on who you ask, 250 to 300 sworn officers. Classes of 10 or 12, you're not going to get there. In St. Paul, the actual department that owns me, I'm on loan to Ramsey County. When I took the test, there were over 1,000 applicants back in '93. 1,000. There were like 3,500 that want to be a trooper. St. Paul had 60 applicants for their last general test. 6-0. In my year on the department in 1994 when I was hired, we had 60 in a class. So I want to thank Scott and the fellow firefighters for all their support on the COLA and the delay bill. We appreciate your efforts on that. We urge you to support and convince leadership that these proposals to the Police and Fire Fund are crucial and worthy of being fully and permanently funded by the state. If you would like, Chair, I could explain the amendment, if you wish, to help clarify what was being discussed earlier.
If you, Mr. Titus, if you could stay up there in case there are questions on the amendment, and then
Absolutely.
we can go ahead and, have questions directed to you. Who we have next is Chief Bradley Jewell, Minnesota Chief of Police Association Board of Directors. Please identify yourself for the record and begin your testimony. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the commission. Boy, I wish I wasn't following him. Although it doesn't look like it, we're the same age. My name is Brady Jewell. I am a police chief in Elkinu Market. I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of the Minnesota Chiefs of Police Association, who represent more than 300 police chiefs across the state and over 150 command staff officers working in departments across the state. I'm also here tonight on behalf of the Minnesota Sheriff's Association, representing 87 elected sheriffs in Minnesota. As of today, there are 276 job postings on the Post website. That is the highest I have seen in my 29 years of being a police officer and then a chief. In fact, over a dozen police departments have been forced to shut down in the past 18 months because they could not find any applicants to fill the police officers' open positions. That list includes Ortonville, Clara City, Morris, and many others. The problem we are facing is twofold. One, very few people are entering the colleges and universities seeking a degree in criminal justice. And two, we are witnessing a significant increase in early retirements by police officers. Throughout my career, I have never encountered a more challenging environment for recruiting and retaining personnel in the public safety sector. The impact on our dedicated public servants has been profound. We are anticipating thousands of current police officers to retire in the next 1 to 3 years based on current pension statistics. With the shortage of candidates in the job market pipeline, we can only expect this to get much worse if we do nothing. HF 5137 presents a pivotal solution for the retention of our highly skilled and experienced staff. As leaders in public safety, it is incumbent upon us to leverage every available resource to attract new talent into the profession and protect those already serving. This bill stands as a crucial instrument in our efforts to achieve this objective. I implore you to recognize the profound significance of this bill in supporting the courageous men and women who risk their lives daily to safeguard our communities and families. By providing supplementary retirement benefits, this plan incentivizes our current employees to prolong their service, thereby benefiting both them and the communities they serve. We have witnessed the success of similar pension programs in other states, where prolonged tenure among public safety officials have become the norm, leading to safer and more stable communities. In our fervent desire to replicate these outcomes here in Minnesota. In conclusion, I urge you to lend your support to HF 5137 and stand with us in providing essential support to those who dedicate their lives to protecting our communities. Again, we thank Representative Wolgamott for bringing this important bill forward and proudly support 5137. Madam Chair, thank you very much for allowing me to testify tonight. It is really an honor. Thank you for being here. Are there any members of the public who would wish to testify on this bill as well? If not, we will move to member questions. Members, a discussion? Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I got a couple questions here, but I just remember back more than a few years ago, city council person for Brooklyn Park that had to resign his position on the city council because they were paying into PERA as a city council member, and he had a job where he wanted to retire from it to get a PERA pension, and to get that pension, he had to quit the city council to do that. so he could collect his pension. But then the next election cycle, he ran for reelection and got his seat back. And so it was, but having to quit to collect the pension, put a crimp in him, and he was one of our better city council person at the time. The other question I have here is, and I guess the way I'm reading this is, I'm a police officer or firefighter, I'm 55, and I fully qualify for my pension. I could continue working, but collect my pension at the same time, and some people might say that's double dipping. I don't know if that would be the case, but so they've got a windfall here. But because I do that, I'm collecting my pension, I would get my salary, and I wouldn't be paying into the PERA pension. My city council wouldn't be paying into the PERA pension, so they'd save money there. I'd actually have a bump in my paycheck because I would not be paying into my share of the pension. And I don't know if this is any different than if I just quit that job and left. PERA is saying that it's gonna cost them money because now they're not getting that money into their pension. But if I quit being a police officer or a firefighter and took another job that wasn't covered by PERA, they still wouldn't be getting that extra money going in. So I don't know where the loss is, but they're paying into, because I'm collecting my pension and I'm working in a different job. So I guess I don't understand that portion of it. But again, that's the way I read this, is that I continue working, I can also collect my pension on top of it, and I'm not having to pay into the pension anymore, so I get that bump, and off the top of my head, I don't know what that bump would be, that I'm not having to pay into the pension plan. It's sort of like a person that's currently with Social Security, above $140,000, they stop paying into Social Security. So they get a 7.5% bump in their pay because now I'm not having to pay into that where everybody below that has to. So I guess I understand this would be a great way to keep police officers in the field. And like I said, I believe that'd be an incentive to continue working. And the way I'm reading it, they wouldn't have to quit service. They could continue serving in their job as a police officer and collect their pension on top of that. So, and I've seen this in other pension plans. It's not something that's new to here. I know of another pension plan where they can continue working and apply for their pension and get it. So I guess it's not unique to this situation. It's just, I want to lay that out there. That's the way I look at it. That's what I'm seeing as a hand in them. If I'm wrong, tell me where I'm wrong in that.
Representative Nelson, just to be clear, are you looking for a response from Mr. Anderson, or were you just making a statement?
I guess I'm actually looking for, if that's the way I'm reading it, maybe from Ms. Luchensky or the other person from the staff, if I'm reading this right.
Director Linczewski.
Yeah, Chair, thank you, Representative. You are correct. So the second page of this bill does exactly that. So you hit 55, you're working, you continue to work, you start your pension. That's exactly what it does. The first part amends there's another section in PERA's chapter that allows people to become reemployed after age 55. Well, you can become reemployed even before then. But the point here with the changes made is that as a police and fire member, you're able to come back and you will not have to suffer from the things that happen to others, which is having your pension reduced because your earnings are higher. The other protections then are in that part of the PERA statute.
Representative Nelson, does that answer?
I think that answers my question. Like I said, the only question, maybe Mr. Anderson can explain where the cost comes from them because if I stopped working as a police or fireman and just started collecting my pension at 55, well, how is that different than this? Because they're still paying that out at 55. I guess that would be the question for Mr. Anderson that I don't quite can't wrap my head around.
Mr. Anderson.
Madam Chair, Representative Nelson, so I think essentially I'm hearing the question be is where does the cost come from here? That I think was initially a bit surprised by the way we were thinking about this, but the reason for the cost is that currently there are nearly half of the members of this plan retire after age 55. So that's what it was before. Now it's a little bit more common to retire by 55, but there's still some that retire after 55. So they may work to 56, 57, 58. So for those members, under this approach, they can do that, continue to work on to 56, 57, 58, but choose to commence their benefit at 55. So what that means for the member is that they will continue to earn a benefit, get a higher benefit, but they'll have this period of time in which they are not, they're now receiving the benefit where they weren't before. That's where a significant amount of cost comes to PERA, is that whereas before they would delay retirement, delay commencement of benefit, now they can delay retirement but start the benefit. That's pretty valuable. That's where the main part of the cost comes to PERA. There's a smaller component of where in this bill, when members continue to work, delay retirement, but commence their benefit, the fund is not collecting their contribution or the employer contribution. That's a cost to the plan as well. But the largest portion of the cost here is that members are now collecting a benefit from the time they're 55 to the time they actually retire.
Representative Nelson, any follow-up?
No follow, thanks.
Thank you. Representative Nadeau.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I've got a couple of questions. And I think Representative Nelson is trying to hone in on exactly what I'm trying to get to as well. I'm trying to figure out why any member would work past 55 with this bill being enacted. And if Mr. Anderson, if you could give me the estimated cost of 100% of the members retiring at 55 and what that would do to the plan.
Why don't we go first to Mr. Drew for who would come back after 55, and then we'll go to Mr. Anderson for the cost if 100% came back.
So, right now, our current pension plan incentivizes us to leave at 55. Step away from the profession, collect your full pension without penalty, because at 55, you can get your full pension without penalty. That's what we're trying to stop. We're trying to incentivize officers that have 30 years of training and experience protecting their communities to stay. If you think of a pipeline, not a lot of water's coming in and a lot's going out. You're gonna drain your pool real quick. So we're looking at this bill, and the Minnesota Chiefs of Police Association is definitely willing to look at any option to try to get this as far as funding passed, but we're trying to incentivize those 55-year and older people to stay and collect their pension and protect their communities. And that's where we see the other states that do this, that becomes the norm, that they're staying longer to protect their communities, the firefighters, the police officers, and that's what encouraged me to bring this bill forward through the chiefs of police, is because I saw my friends, my peers, leaving at 51, 52, 53 because of the climate, but they might stay till 55, and they're leaving. And all this knowledge and protection is going out the door, and we're trying whatever we can. And I'm passionate about it because I'm getting there, and I want to stay longer, and nothing keeps me from doing that. It's just I'm incentivized to leave and go look for a different career.
Mr. Anderson, do you want to respond to the with the cost for 100% returning?
Yes, Madam Chair, Representative Nadeau. The assumption used for the study was that the retirement rates occurring after age 55 would be 50% higher than they currently are, which is a little bit different than saying 50% would retire at that age. But if that rate was doubled, if we were to say the rates of retirement were 100% higher than what was previously experienced, the cost estimate would roughly double from what we have.
Representative Nadeau.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And And can you, and I'm sorry, Chief, I can't remember your name.
Brady Jewell.
All right, thank you. Can you talk a little bit more, I mean, and I have one question for Mr. Titus after this too, so I'll try to be succinct. I don't understand if there's an incentive, it's not an incentive, it's a career rule. You know, that's no incentive, that's just what it is. So how does this bill incentivize you to continue to work? You can do that now. You can only go up to the Social Security amount, so I get that part. But is that the only thing that is the incentive? Because there's a significant cost to this proposal that there is no funding source for currently. So it may be an incentive, but there's a massive cost associated with that incentive. Can you talk a little bit about that balance?
Chief? Jewel? Yes. Do you want to respond to that, or? Yes.
Madam and the council. The cost of not doing it is greater. The cost of a police department shutting down, the cost of, as we saw in the Star Tribune, Chief O'Hara, Minneapolis Police, they're looking at a model where they no longer will investigate or respond to property crimes. Personally, I didn't get to see all the actuarial numbers. I am a little confused about if I were to step away and receive 100% of my pension. So I walk away, I receive 100% of my pension, but I stay. I realize that under the current bill, maybe I don't contribute, but the city may contribute, other may contribute, and we can work on that if it helps. But if I pull my pension either way, I'm stepping away, but I can do the job that I love and I'm dedicated to doing. I see that as an incentive to stay. I can reap the rewards of my 30 years of service to my community, and mind you, funding the pension program, right, out of my paycheck and my city's contributions, and yet still stay with my community. And the costs, I realize there's some costs, but I look at the other states, the 8 states that have these pension plans that are healthy, and I know they're able to do it and to keep their public safety officials longer. And as I said before, the Minnesota Chiefs Police Association, we're looking at working with all the stakeholders to make it happen and what can adjust those actuarial numbers to make it more palatable and help the police and fire industries, protect their communities.
And Representative Nadeau, your next question is for Inspector Titus, is that?
No, it's going to be for Mr. Anderson.
Okay.
It's based on something that Mr. Titus said.
Representative Nadeau.
And thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chief, I apprite that. And don't get me wrong, I'm completely supportive of what you guys are doing. There's just a funding issue with this thing. Mr. Anderson, Mr. Titus said that the current, he was talking about the increased number of law enforcement leaving the field, and that's part of what's prompted this thing. Can you talk a little bit about, so you've itemized the costs on this based on what you think, if 50% of the population retires at 50. Is there a bit of can you talk a little bit about the people that are leaving currently now? Has that created an issue for the fund, or is it still small enough where it hasn't? And is this cost possibly a little bit higher due to an unforeseen early retirement or people leaving the field, or am I completely off base with this?
Mr. Anderson?
Madam Chair, Representative Nadeau, you're not off base on this. So part of the study, when we looked at this, was, in talking with stakeholders, was realizing that there are more police officers retiring earlier. And so when we talked to our actuary about the study, initially, they based the study on the current assumptions of the plan, which were based off of what was happening from 2015 to 2019. And we know it's a different time now. And so we went back to our actuary and said, could you just look back at the last year and tell us, what do we see in the plan for retirements? And they were seeing what we were hearing, in that there are more early retirements, either early retirements before 55 or even working after 55. There are fewer working longer after 55. So we use that data to update this study. Now, what that also means is that our actuaries, they're in the process now of doing the experience study for the period from 2019 to 2023, the new experience study, and we're expecting to see the impact of those earlier retirements, which are going to kind of, if adopted, the new assumptions, we're likely going to see a cost impact here. In other words, kind of the cost impact that we're seeing for people starting their benefit earlier, we're likely to see that regardless of this bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Doe. And Senator Howe?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'm trying to figure out if and maybe this is for Chief Jewell, the way I see this is most folks had a goal like I did, started at 25, worked 30, 33 years max to try and get that 100% at 33 years and go out with a full pay. Start at 22, works out perfectly for 55, but that didn't work out for me. I left early. I went out at 52. But when someone retires and gonna come back, do they come back at the, let's say it's a lieutenant or captain, do they come back in their lieutenant captain position?
As we wrote this, you would stay employed in your current position. And regarding the amendment earlier, it was never intended to facilitate jumping because that defeats the purpose. I want to keep my officers staffed where they are. And it was to allow them to circumvent the rule. When we hire somebody new, we have to give them psychological testing. We have to do certain things. But if this was meant so we could just keep them employed in their current job, they come back right where they're at and stay serving their community in the capacity that they're in. Senator Howe.
So I think there's got to be some amendment to this to make it do just exactly what you're thinking of doing. And I think if they're going to jump, they should have that psychological. And if they stay with their current employer, they can bypass that and not do that.
Current post rules already dictate if you go to another agency, you have to do that. There's certain things that you have to do, and it's not in the fire industry mandated. They're all doing it, but we have to by post. So there's already mechanisms in place for that. I do agree the amendment would need to be more clear. We thought it was clear, but once you get to more stakeholders, it muddies a little bit. But that was not our intent to be able to jump. Senator Howe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the other question I have then, if you've got someone that is reaching that 55 point and is looking at someone ahead of them that may leave, and I'm thinking that maybe I can apply for that job and get that captain's position or that lieutenant's position, get a bump, I might stay another 4 or 5 years to increase my pension. But if that person is gonna retire and come back and fill the position, does that not hurt your recruitment and retention because now I've stagnated my force and I don't have that upward mobility?
Chief Jewell. I feel that we are already losing enough people, and people are gonna, we were lucky enough to have this pass, that cycle's gonna continue. It might be 2 or 3 years longer, but with no one coming in frequently, it's gonna keep us at our levels, is what we're hoping. So if somebody was hoping to be promoted to that position, that would be like hoping they leave. You're losing that experience out the door either way. And what I'm saying as a chief, I cannot afford to lose anybody. And from my experience, like Mr. Titus's, I was testing in the 90s with 850 and 900 people for one position. I had a posting for one position for 6 weeks and I got one applicant. And I would be lucky to get 30 and 40 like St. Paul and Minneapolis are getting to have to choose from. Now, I was very lucky. It only took that one, and I was lucky they came from North Dakota to here because we have better pension and things like that. But I
I can't speak to that because all I know is I don't want anyone going out the door. And I think this helps. Madam Chair, thank you for the time.
One
Sorry
more,
about that.
Senator Howe.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm just going to make a comment that I have been contacted by folks that are in the lower ranks and saying, you're going to stagnate me and not give me that upward mobility, and that they may look to other opportunities because that might not work. I'm just saying that that's something we got to take into consideration as we look at this whole package. And so that's something that we need to look at. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative O'Driscoll, you get to have the last questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think both these questions are for Mr. Anderson. In listening to the testimony tonight, you talked about the $16 million hole that's being created with this plan. If we're seeing a trend right now of people exiting the industry at age 55, a solid trend on that, doesn't this situation already exist without having a change in legislation with the shortfall that you're presenting tonight of the 16 million?
Mr. Anderson.
Madam Chair, Representative O'Driscoll, yes, that is a concern. So we haven't confirmed that yet. It's just the word we have from our actuaries seeing the higher rates. That would be that, yes, we would expect some cost to be in the plan. We did adjust the baseline for this study so that we're only measuring the incremental cost of this bill for this study. But aside from this study, we are expecting that earlier retirement rates will have an adverse impact on the plan.
Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And then the second question, Mr. Anderson, kind of thinking about what the State Patrol brought forward, where the Department of Public Safety would still continue to pay into the state, MSRS State Patrol Fund. I don't believe this bill anticipates that continuing to happen in the time of retirement. Does that help your shortfalls if upon return to the community, we have those individuals? I mean, there's a benefit to the local community, right? If this person didn't retire, they'd still be paying in. If this person retired and they hired someone, they would be paying in, yet at a lower rate. But because we've got this donor hole where the retiree is coming back, if we don't ask the local jurisdiction to continue to pay the city's portion or the county's portion, that will magnify, I think, the problem that we're talking about here. And by collecting at least that side of the issue, and maybe modeling it more after what the State Patrol has, where there's a refund then of contribution by the employee who would be leaving when they, if I can use the term, retire the second time, they would get that paid out as a lump sum with interest on that. And certainly that money could be used for retirement or retirement benefits. Does that kind of a model that the State Patrol was talking about help the situation that you're talking about? Because I don't know that this bill necessarily anticipates the local employing agency to continue to pay into the fund, which becomes a very big cost driver, from what I see.
Mr. Anderson.
Madam Chair, Representative O'Driscoll, we did anticipate that question in the memo that, the PERA memo we had from March 28th. It does include some cost estimates if that State Patrol model were applied here. So the contribution coming from the employer does help, but it's still a smaller component of the overall cost. And our estimates is that it would change the cost from 17.3 million a year to about 16 million a year under that approach.
Representative O'Driscoll.
Just a comment then versus a question. Then if this is the case in this plan under similar circumstances, I think you probably also need to do another round of questions on the State Patrol bill to make sure that for some reason we are not overlooking this with their actuaries in the situation. Because it seems to me that on this side of the coin, we have a problem. On this side of the coin, we don't. Either we have a problem on both sides of the coin or we don't have a problem on either side of the coin. I guess I'd like to at some point know more information about that. And that State Patrol bill, I understand, is not the subject of our conversation tonight. So in interest of time, you don't want to go there, but that is something that I think warrants a little bit more vetting and investigation. We want to get these bills right, folks, right? Because if we don't, then we're turning around going, well, what did this mean? What did that mean? And then we've got people who are frustrated because they were making plans in retirement based on something that's not feasible in their law because of the structure of the bill and what ultimately becomes law. And I don't want to put anybody through that burden either.
Thank you, Representative O'Driscoll. And I know that Aaron London from MSRS is here, but in the interest of time, Aaron, Ms. Leonard, maybe we can save the response for another day, or do we want an answer today, members? I just want to.
Madam Chair, if we delay the response, people will come back to get that answer at some point in the future, so maybe that's a good thing.
Well, why don't we, because the bill, Mr. Anderson?
Well, I could just maybe brief, Madam Chair, is that we're coming from two different starting points. The way the PERA plan operates currently is different from where the MSRS plan operates currently. So we have two different starting points, and thus we can have two different
Outcome.
cost impacts,
Yeah.
one way or the other.
Ms. Leonard, why don't you just go ahead and briefly just maybe respond to that, so we don't have to call you back again another time. Thank you, Ms. Leonard. If you could just reintroduce yourself.
Erin Leonard, Director of MSRS. So like Doug said, we're starting from two different places. Right now, the State Patrol plan, when they return to work, they actually earn additional retirement benefits. So there's a cost associated with that. The way the State Patrol plan bill is written and was currently passed out of state government finance and amended here has the individual coming back to work, collecting their pension, and paying in for contributions, but not earning a new benefit. So we get the employer contributions, it's a gain for the plan. The other difference with State Patrol and Police and Fire, our demographics are different. So our retirees almost always retire at age 55. And there's a mandatory retirement at age of 60. So the longest period that someone could really do this is 5 years, and it's all built in. Whereas I believe this police and fire plan, some of their folks do work past 55, a larger percentage than our folks. So those are a couple differences that make us a little different and coming from different places from a financial perspective in this context.
Thank you, Ms. Leonard. Thank you for the robust conversation, members. And if there is no further discussion, Representative Wolgamott, if you could please make closing comments and renew your motion.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair and members, for the discussion on House File 5137. In closing, Madam Chair and members, I again want to bring it back to the cold, hard numbers that illustrate the law enforcement workforce shortage. Again, we are at approximately 1,000 open positions. And we're looking at 2 years from now, approximately 2,400 officers eligible for the retirement age. Yes, there is a cost to this bill, but think about the cost of doing nothing. Think about what that is going to cost our communities, our families, our properties, the lives of Minnesotans if we do not use the tools that we have as this commission to provide incentives through pensions for police officers and firefighters to stay on the job. By finding funding for House File 5137, we can directly address the law enforcement workforce shortage by incentivizing retired police and firefighters to rejoin service without impacting their retirement annuity. This will give a two-pronged benefit. On one end of the pipeline, will encourage seasoned professionals to stay on the job and doing service, while filling the other end of the pipeline by enriching the skill and knowledge pool within agencies, leading to improved law enforcement outcomes and public safety throughout our state. That's why we need to find the funding for this bill. That's why I'm asking for your support to include House File 5137 in our final bill. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Representative Wolgamott, and then I will renew your motion, my apologies. I renew your motion to lay over House File 5137 as amended. Members, we have 2 bills left, and so hopefully we can get through these pretty quickly. Thank you all for your commitment to staying here and hearing all of the bills. Our next bill on the agenda is Senate File 5227 from Senator Rasmusson and the House Companion Representative Nelson, resolving a conflict in statute on full funding dates across the pension plans. Representative Nelson and Senator Rasmusson, once you get settled, if you want to go ahead and
That's not a laptop, that's.
No, that's, then he didn't leave. I'll let him know.
That's.
Let you explain it. Happy to.
Then he must not.
Okay, just got it this morning.
Senator Rasmusson, do you want to move the bill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I move that Senate File 5227 be recommended to pass and be incorporated into the omnibus pension and retirement bill. And I'm also happy to explain the bill, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, and if you want to explain the bill for us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the bill before the commission deals with amortization dates. And amortization dates are, in simple terms, deadlines for when pension funds should be fully paid for, when they're 100% funded. And in the 2018 pension reform package, the legislation set amortization dates for our major statewide pension plans at the year 2048. So that means by 2048, these major plans should be 100% funded. However, there is some legacy language in state statute that now creates a conflict with those amortization dates set back in 2018. This conflicting language states that if unfunded liabilities increase for the plans, that there's a calculation that could lead to extending the amortization date. So today, for a number of our statewide plans, they have two distinct amortization dates that conflict with each other. This bill resolves that conflict and would set amortization dates to what was passed in the 2018 bill. So why is this important? This is important because if we continue to push out the amortization dates for our pension funds, that's bad for members, it's bad for taxpayers, it hides the cost of benefits, and it can lead to underfunding our pension funds. It can also lead to unfairness across retirees and actives in terms of how unfunded liabilities are distributed. So I appreciate, Madam Chair, the opportunity to present this bill today. I do have a couple of amendments as well, if you'd like to take those at this time.
We will go ahead and move the amendments as well. I just want to make sure, check with Director Linczewski to see if there's any additional comments that she wants to add to the bill itself.
No, I would only note that our actuary, Mark Schulte, is here if anybody's interested in how that calculation was done in the conflicting statute, but if we don't have an interest in that, we don't need to call Mr. Schulte up, but he is here.
Thank you, and we'll just have Mr. Schulte on hand for questions then afterwards. And so with that, Senator Rasmusson, if you want to move your 2A amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I would move the 2A amendment and happy to explain the amendment.
Please explain the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The 2A amendment came at the request of the directors of our statewide pension funds to create a work group that would meet over the interim to consider potential legislation on amortization dates for next session. And there's a number of different factors that this group is asked to consider. I think, we've heard, Madam Chair, earlier on as the statewide pension plans were making presentations that best practices is oftentimes to move to a shorter amortization period than what we in Minnesota have used historically. And so this was at the request of the plan directors to have the opportunity to do some work with LCPR staff in the interim and to come back with recommendations.
Thank you, Senator Rasmussen. Any discussion on the 2A amendment? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? The motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. I understand you have another amendment, Senator Rasmussen?
Yes, Madam Chair. I would like to move the 1A amendment, and I'm happy to explain the amendment.
Please go ahead and explain the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So last year in the tax omnibus conference committee report, the amortization date for TRA was moved out from 2048 to 2053. And that effectively goes against the advice for our commission actuary by saying that we're kicking the can down the road to fund our liabilities and our obligation for TRA. And this amendment before the commission would correct that. It would take it back to 2048. And I think there are a few very good reasons for doing this. One is right now, TRA has an inconsistency compared to our other statewide plans that have an amortization date in 2048. Even, for example, for St. Paul teachers is at 2048 versus now TRA is on track to be in 2053. This also, Madam Chair, makes the math for anything that we look at for TRA skewed because we are effectively kicking the can down the road for when we're going to fund these unfunded liabilities against our actuary's advice. I also think, Madam Chair, that this is a really important amendment to adopt because last session, a major, fairly technical pension policy was changed in a tax conference committee report that was not, and had changes to amortization dates that was not approved by this commission. And I think this would help correct and make sure that we don't set a dangerous precedent for allowing technical, important pension matters to be discussed outside of this commission and to have those decisions not be made by legislators and experts who have dedicated themselves to this topic. So I would ask for members' support. I would also say that this does not prevent TRA from bringing a bill next year, and perhaps even as a result of this working group, to talk about what is the right amortization date for them. But I do think that that's a decision that this commission should make, we should discuss, we should consult with our actuaries, and not allow it to be thrown into a tax conference committee report when this commission hasn't approved it.
Thank you, Senator Rasmussen. Any discussion on the 1A amendment? Any discussions? Mr. Stoffel, looks like you want to make a comment on the 1A amendment. Please identify yourself for the record and begin. Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Jay Stoffel, Executive Director of TRA. The reason why we pushed out our amortization date last year to 2053 was a way to dampen the annual cost requirement for the bill, the pension improvement that we passed last year of changing normal retirement age from 66 to 65. There was a cost associated with that. The employees and the employers are scheduled to pay an extra 1% more to pay for that benefit. And then extending the amortization date dampens the annual cost of that benefit improvement. If we roll back our date now from 2053 to 2048, it would increase the actuarial required contribution rate by 0.8% of payroll, or $50 million a year, and that would increase by 3% a year with our assumed payroll growth. So it's an amount of $50 million a year additional in required contributions. Thank you, Mr. Stoffel. Any discussion, members? Senator Pappas.
Mr. Chairman and Mr. Stoffel or Senator Rasmussen, Madam Chairman. So why did this happen in the tax bill and not be discussed in Pension Commission?
Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Pappas, for that question. On the Senate floor, I asked the Senate tax chair for that same reason, and she said that she did not have an answer. And unfortunately, this is something that was thrown in at the last minute in the tax conference committee report. There was no pension provisions in the tax report, and definitely nothing related to amortization. And so that's why I brought this amendment here today. I think it will correct an important oversight that happened last session. And I also wanted to respond, Madam Chair, to Mr. Stoffel's comment about this dampening the cost. This amortization date does not impact the cost at all. It impacts the math. And if we're going to use amortization dates and kicking the can down the road to leave our pension funds underfunded, if that's the policy that we're going to have, we will not ignore the real costs. The cost is what the cost will be. What this did was to paper over the cost and to leave Minnesota teachers holding the bag. And I think we have heard loud and clear from teachers across the state that they continue to have concerns with them getting stuck with the bill for other teachers. And this is a way with this amendment to address those concerns and to ensure that if we are going to be making benefit improvements, that we pay for them and not paper over the costs and hope that a future legislature will figure out a way to pay for it.
Any follow-up, Senator Pappas?
I just wanted to hear from Director Stiefel.
Thank you. Oh, it's from Stoffel. Mr. Stoffel. Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Pappas, I think the way I would describe this is, I mean, we weren't trying to hide any cost. We talked about the cost. We disclosed the cost of the benefit improvement. Maybe a simple analogy would be if you have a mortgage that's 25 years versus a mortgage that's 30 years. The one that has a 30-year schedule has a lower annual payment because you have a longer time to pay for it. Having a shorter period of time will increase the monthly cost. So it's a matter of, the cost is the cost. That's absolutely right. We're not trying to paper over any cost. There was a cost amount to that benefit improvement. Instead of paying it over 20 5 years, the bill allowed us to pay it out over a 30-year period of time. Just it's dampening the annual cost, not the total cost, but the annual cost of the benefit improvement. And again, by reverting back to 2048, adds $50 million a year to the annual required contribution rate. Again, we're going to shorten the schedule now, so the annual cost will go up. Senator Pappas, any follow-up? Senator Frentz.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Senator Rasmusson. You know, I do appreciate your work in pensions, and I know you're thoughtful about the financial issues. My concern here is very simple, and it's to the mortgage comparison. The legislature made the decision to push the date out based on all the factors, and I think those choices need to be made on a case-by-case, bill-by-bill, and year-by-year measure. We've all received on this commission, I don't know how many hundreds of emails from teachers. I have yet to receive one that says, please increase the contribution rate between now and 2048, so I'll have to be a no on the amendment. I do look forward to the work on it, and I do think there's a question, Madam Chair, about generational fairness or equity, if that's the right term, which is we don't want to put too much of a burden on today's teachers or too little, because we want the next generation to choose to be teachers, and we have to be able to tell them, you're not getting stuck with too much or too little. Thank you.
Thank you. And Representative O'Driscoll, and then we'll go to Representative Nadeau.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Rasmusson, I had to stop because you were a representative at one point, so I almost gave you promotion once again. But to that point, I think what you were saying when, about the mortgage on the property, we started out with a 25-year mortgage, then the lender came and said, it's 30. And then the lender comes back and says, no, it's 35. At what point do you pay it off? And at what point do you get the mortgage satisfaction that you're 100% fully paid? And again, I don't want to put any words in your mouth, but that's what I thought I heard from you. And maybe if you can just respond very quickly if my assessment's correct on that.
Senator Rasmusson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative O'Driscoll. You're exactly right. And we had heard from the actuaries that this commission pays for that moving out the date to 30 years was against best practices. We heard that from them. And if TRA wants to bring a bill to change their amortization date, they should bring that bill and we should debate it as a commission and vote on it on its merits. We should not allow something that's highly technical to get thrown into a tax conference committee report at the last minute. And I want to say one other thing too, this does not change the contributions. If this amendment is adopted, this becomes law, teachers aren't going to be paying more in, it doesn't decrease benefits at all. This will make sure that when TRA is presenting on their unfunded liabilities, that we know the true costs and the true facts so that we can make the right decisions for today's teachers and for tomorrow's teachers. And if we're gonna use amortization dates to produce fake numbers for us to look at as a pension commission, we're gonna continue to have issues going forward. And so I think this is a common sense thing. I think it is, adopting this amendment is a signal of respect for the pension commission and its work. And I think if we don't, it sets a dangerous precedent for the future. So thank you, Representative O'Driscoll, for the question.
Representative O'Driscoll.
Just a quick follow-up. I suspect that if we had lenders, because that's the analogy that we're looking at, that would talk to borrowers and say, okay, we're going to send you another notice that your mortgage is going from 25 to 30 years or from 30 to 35 years. We would have a number of bills being introduced in this legislature to stop that kind of behavior. At some point along the line, if we don't get these costs and get the numbers and work with hard numbers, and they're both hard as in what are they and hard numbers to get to, we will see suits from people in the way of bills coming in saying, you've got to get this done. We are dancing on some very dangerous ground. So Senator Rasmusson, I laud you for this effort. And I hope that it brings the result that this commission needs to be able to know what the real costs are, instead of just, again, kicking that mortgage out with the lender, because there's going to be a day where the borrower is going to say, not so interested in the fuzzy math anymore.
Representative Nadeau.
And thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Rasmusson. I think this amendment is right on. You know, when this came up last year and it got jammed through in the tax bill, it was wrong then, and this is a repair. And Mr. Stoffel, I think that you should support this. Not push back against it. I mean, the contributions are in statute. I mean, the contributions are the contributions. But what it is, it's going to exactly do what Senator Rasmusson said, and that is it's going to identify the costs that we can all look at and provide that baseline. And I have worked hard with teachers. And I brought a bill a couple of weeks ago where I tried to bring a bill that said, and hopefully we're gonna continue looking at that so that teachers can have an enhanced benefit that somebody's gonna have to pay for. My bill identified the funding source for that. Many career teachers support that bill. And it's honest, and it's upfront. That's what Senator Rasmusson is trying to do with this amendment, and I think it's a good amendment, and I thank you for bringing it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Nelson.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Rasmusson, I appreciate you bringing this amendment. This is tough medicine, but sometimes you have to take the tough medicine. And I believe we need to do this now to simply, I mean, we can look at the discussion that we've had here tonight, comparing the state patrol pension with the Minnesota police and peace officers. And yet, and we've talked about parity before. And if we are going to not have parity in how we look at pension liabilities, we are heaping problems upon ourselves. And so, while this is some tough medicine to take, I think we have to be, have parity in how we describe pension liabilities. And that's all that this 1A amendment is doing. And I also am incensed that this was shoved in at the last minute in the tax committee, in the conference committee. This is not good policy. When something as complex and as critical to our teachers as their pension is kicked around as if it's just something that we can just nonchalantly change without having a real effect. So I am supporting this 1A amendment, and I believe it is the responsible, but the adult and difficult thing to do.
Thank you, Senator Nelson. And we do have a member in the public who would like to testify in this amendment, Ms. Caitlin Snyder with Edmund.
Madam Chair and members of the commission, my name is Caitlin Snyder with Education Minnesota. Please let the record show that tonight is my birthday, so legally you have to be nice to me. I appreciate the consideration of this amendment, but I would remind the commission that there were changes that the commission did approve last year that increased the unfunded liabilities of TRA by 2 billion%. The commission supported the change moving the assumed rate of return from 7.5% to 7%, which increased the unfunded liabilities and TRA's ability to hit the amortization date significantly. So this is part and parcel of the work that the commission did last year, and would urge members to vote against the amendment. Thank you.
Senator Howe and then Senator Nelson.
Well, Madam Chair, I guess I would like to get your feelings on, I think my personal belief is, I think sets a bad precedent that normally we deal with pension stuff here at the pension committee, and having stuff put in bills, and I think it's usually been universally accepted, we don't do things with pensions unless it comes through this committee, and you're the chair of this committee. Your thoughts on having this done in other areas where you have no knowledge or control of?
Thank you, Senator Howe, for that question. So this particular issue is something that I did discuss with leadership last year when the bill was passed. And I think, as you all remembered, we had a one-time target of $600 million, no tails in that. And we did make a structural change to the normal retirement age for teacher pensions, which means that we needed ongoing funding. And the only way to have been able to do that is to actually have those funds come out of a committee or a budget that actually had tails that would pay for this, because, as you all know, being fiscally responsible is really important to me as well, and that I could not absorb that into our pension budget because we didn't have tails. And so I understand that the only option in order to have been able to provide this benefit was to go through the taxes committee. I think that the piece that I was missing is probably the amortization and that tie to this particular piece, but I understand that the two went together, and maybe I could have asked more questions at the time, but I do feel that changing one piece of this and not looking at what it was trying to fund, I think would hurt some of the the progress that we made in trying to provide benefits to teachers. They had a much bigger ask that cost us billions of dollars that I wish that we could have done because our teachers have been through a lot these last few years, especially during the pandemic. And so I would say that because I would need to look into this a little bit further, I would recommend a no vote today. But I do agree with you, Senator Howe and Senator Nelson, that I was also concerned about having something go through a different committee versus coming through pensions. I thought, well, why don't you just give me the money in pensions and then we could just pass it out of pension here. But the way everything was structured, that was just something that at that time I was told couldn't be done. And so I do agree with the two of you from that aspect that it should always come through pensions because pensions is complicated and the people best able to look at it and analyze that are the people on the commission. And so I take both of your points really to heart, and that I would agree with the two of you on how this should actually operate. But for this particular piece, I would vote no, just because I need to know more of if I pull this lever, what happens to the NRA that we passed in order to fund that ongoing into the future. So I hope that that helps clarify a little bit. I appreciate that. I know Senator Nelson, you did have your hand up as well. Did you have any additional comments?
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I just was realizing that perhaps I should have given some full disclosure. This does affect me. I have a TRA pension, so I don't know that that's important, but I always think it's important to have full disclosure, so.
Thank you, Senator Nelson. I appreciate that. Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and as the House author of this bill, it was just dropped in this morning. I just received the jackets this morning. I do not support the 1A amendment, and I'll be voting no on that.
Thank you, Representative Nelson. Mr. Stoffel, last comment, and then we're going to go to the vote to the amendment. Thank you, Madam Chair. One thing I would also point out, if we had done nothing to the amortization date last year, we would have gone through the normal, during the actuarial valuation process, we would have gone through the normal calculations, and there's that automatic reset that's contained in the staff memo that is part of this original bill. We would have gone through that amortization reset date calculation, and our date would have been pushed out from 2048 to something 2, 3, 4, maybe as much as 5 years longer. I see the MSRS General plan is moved out to 2053. P&F plan 2049 and PERA local government 2053. We'd be someplace very close to that had we not changed anything because of the normal reset, the automatic reset of the amortization date. So it's almost a moot point. If we had done nothing, we'd be at 2053 or close to it. Thank you. Senator Rasmusson, any closing remarks before we go ahead and take the vote on this 1A amendment?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I do appreciate the passionate discussion on amortization dates. Only in the Pension Commission could we have such passionate feelings about amortization dates. But I do think that actually underscores the point of why this amendment is really important. This committee, the members of the committee, the stakeholders that are here in the room care a lot about getting this pension policy right. And if we're going to be making important changes to Minnesota pension policy, it should be vetted and approved by this pension commission. And I want to just make clear for members as they're deciding how to vote on this, this A1 amendment does not change funding, does not change it by 1 penny, doesn't change anyone's benefit by 1 penny. And Madam Chair, to Mr. Stoffel's comment on this being a moot point, the underlying bill that we're talking about will actually repeal that legacy language that would kick out the amortization date, because I think there's bipartisan consensus that it's bad policy. And I think we should also follow the advice of this commission's actuary, respect the process of the pension commission. And so I would ask for members' support on the 1A. If TRA wants to bring a bill next year to change their amortization date and justify it, this commission can review and could pass that and could change that.
Thank you, Senator Rasmussen. And with that, with no further discussion, all those in favor of adopting the 1A amendment to the House file 5227, Senate file 5227, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. No. The amendment does not prevail, and the motion does not prevail, and the amendment is not adopted.
Madam Chair, division.
Senator Rasmussen calls a division. Senator Rasmussen, just to clarify with the division, you're asking for a roll call vote then on just division? Senator Rasmusson, so with the division, apparently the policy for the commission is that for the votes to raise hands on the yeas and the nays, and we will take a count so that we can have record of that. So we will take that count again. All those in favor of the 1A amendment to Senate File 5227, please raise your hand for staff to count. All those opposed?
Rasmusson voted.
Rasmusson already voted. He voted yes. But it has to pass both sides. All right, there being six yeas and 7 nays, the division is called and it does not prevail. So the amendment is not adopted. Back to the underlying bill as amended. We do have testifiers here today who would like to testify on the bill, and the first is Doug Anderson, Executive Director of the Public Employees Retirement Association. Please identify yourself for the record and begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Doug Anderson, Executive Director for PERA and member of the American Academy of Actuaries. PERA's board does not have an official position on these changes, but staff does appreciate the clarification of the conflicting language and the removal of the obsolete language. We also appreciate the opportunity to participate in an amortization work group to bring suggestions more in line with actuarial best practices and to move away from an existing weak standard that pushes past service costs too far out to future generations. Thank you for hearing my testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. The next testifier is Jay Stoffel, Executive Director of the Teachers Retirement Association.
I don't need to comment on this one.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stoffel. And member discussion on the underlying bill as amended. Seeing no discussion, Senator Rasmusson and Representative Nelson, do you have any closing remarks before you move the bill?
I'll just say, Madam Chair and members, the study that's going into this is good for future legislation. I think we should do that. Again, I oppose the 1A amendment, but the bill overall, I think is a good bill.
Thank you. And Senator Rasmusson, do you want to move your bill again?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I renew my motion that Senate File 5227 as amended be recommended to pass and be incorporated into the omnibus pension and retirement bill.
Thank you, Senator Rasmusson. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. The motion prevails, and Senate File 5227 and its House companion, as amended, is recommended to pass and be incorporated into the omnibus pension and retirement bill. Our last bill for today is Revisor number 24-08106 it is a bill that myself and Senator and Vice Chair Frentz to look back for full funding threshold from 1 year to 3 years for all plans except MSRS. Vice Chair Frentz, do you want to go to the table or just do it from here?
Madam Chair, I won't go to the table.
Okay.
I think just do it from here.
Although Senator Pappas suggested I just do it from here. So I'm going to follow that advice.
It's quicker.
Would you like to move move the language code for Revisor 24-08106?
Madam, I do want to move the language for Revisor 24-08106.
Be recommended to pass and be incorporated.
Incorporated for possible inclusion in the pension omnibus bill.
Thank you,
Madam Chair.
Vice Chair Frentz. Now we have an alternative nonpartisan staff to walk us through the bill. LCPR Executive Director Susan Lincheski.
Yes, the Revisor Bill number 24-08106 revises the expiration date for supplemental employer contributions and state aids to require that a plan meet a funding threshold, generally 100%, for 3 consecutive years rather than just 1 year before the state aid or contributions will end. This is a change that was made in the Commission's 2023 Omnibus Pension Bill at the request of MSRS. And so the MSRS, a couple of their plans were changed, and the judge's plan, the state aid. So they were changed from a 1-year look back to a 3-year look back. The amendments to the relevant statutes changed the expiration date from the earlier of July 1, 2048, or the first pay period after the fiscal year in which the plan's funded ratio reaches 100%. And the changes to go from that to the earlier of July 1, 2048, or the first pay period after the third fiscal year in which the plan's funded ratio reaches 100%. We included with the staff summary in your materials a chart that shows all the supplemental employer contributions and state aids, the amount of the contribution or state aid, the expiration date, the plan's funded ratio, so you can check if anybody's getting near that 100% threshold, and you will find out that they are not, and the cite to the statute that provides for the contributions or aid. The bill has 8 sections, each of which amend the expiration date for a supplemental employer contribution or a state aid. And that's my overview.
Thank you, Executive Director Linchesky. We do have a couple of testifiers here. Mr. Anderson, Executive Director of Public Employee Retirement Association, and then Mr. Jay Stoffel, Executive Director of the Teachers Retirement Association. If you both just want to come up now and go ahead and get yourselves situated. Mr. Anderson, if you want to go ahead and identify yourself for the record and begin your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Doug Anderson, Executive Director for PERA. While PERA does not have an official board position on this change, we do believe it's a step in the right direction. We have advocated for this type of change before and believe it is an effective change to manage the impact of investment volatility and to keep an emphasis on maintaining well-funded plans.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Stoffel, please identify yourself and begin. Thank you, Madam Chair. Jay Stoffel, Executive Director of TRA. TRA is very similar, does not have an official position on this, but we are in favor of it. It will reduce some of the volatility that may occur with contribution rates. So the 3-year time period is we're in strong support of the bill. Thank you. Members, any questions or comments? Representative Nadeau.
And thank you, Madam Chair, and I apologize if this is a question that everyone knows except for me, but can somebody tell me what the practice, I mean, I recognize that having a 3-year look back would obviously get rid of a little bit of a, bump on a good year or a bad year, but can somebody give me the practical application of why this is important?
Director Linchesky. Mr. Anderson.
Madam Chair, Representative Nadeau, I think we had an example of this with our police and fire plan just a few years ago when there was a year in which the valuation reflected what our actuary was calling an unreasonable assumption of 7.5% on the investment return. At the same time, there was a spike in the investments. So we had a nice run up on the investments, on the assets that looked good. At a time, the measurement of the liability based on or actually said it was an inflated assumption, was lower. It was very close to triggering off the state aids. So we might have had an unusual spike in activity that would turn this off. And a year later, the market went way down. The assumption was changed to 7%. And we're talking about our police and fire plan, which is now not expected to reach full funding until 2061. So for us, that's an example of what can you do to take away the impact of volatility. This is an approach that would require that kind of smooth something out so that it's less likely for an individual 1-year spike to turn something off.
Representative Nadeau.
And thank you, Madam Chair. And so is that the only time in your history here where that happened, that 3 or 4 years ago? And I'm not opposed to it. I don't like passing laws just to pass laws.
Mr. Anderson.
Madam Chair, Representative Nadeau, well, that was the closest call, but it can happen again. And the investments, we see investments can still have a lot of volatility from year to year.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Pappas.
Yeah, Madam Chair, just wondering if there's any reason why we couldn't have the motion to actually incorporate this into the omnibus bill. Seems like seems like a good idea for planning purposes.
Senator Pappas, I think that was the original motion. I just did not have the right motion for Senator Frentz to to make. So we will renew the motion, we will renew it for it to be included. Thank you. Any further discussion? Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I belong to an ERISA-backed pension plan, a private pension plan. And they used to have, it used to be a rule that if they were 105% funded, they had to make improvements to the plan as far as improved benefits, cut contributions, so that they kind of keep at that 105%. In 2008, the bottom dropped out of the market. Most of those plans dropped from 105%, and that happened to our plans here. A lot of our plans before that were close to 100% funded. When the bottom dropped out, the housing bubble burst, our plans dropped way down in funding. The president at the time raised that 105 to 130%. If that had happened beforehand where they were above the 105% funded, when they dropped from 105 to 60% funded, and that's in the danger zone, that had been 130% funded and dropped the same amount, they still would have been about 75% funded, and they wouldn't have been as bad off. I think something we should look at along with doing this and keeping the funding going is that we should look at doing that we shouldn't be shooting for 100%. We should be building ourselves a bit of a buffer into the plan so that when the market drops, and it will drop, we all know that, we will all have shortfalls. And the unfortunate part, like I said earlier, when that happens to our pension plans, it also usually happens a recession, and our state budget is in a deficit at the same time, and we don't have the extra money to put in. So I mean, that's something looking forward. I support what we're doing here with this, but I think looking forward, we should also look at raising that expectation from 100% to giving ourselves a cushion, maybe 110%, before we start looking at improvements. And again, I'm not running for reelection, so I won't be here next year to do that. But I'm just saying that's a suggestion I have, that I'm putting it out there for everyone that's going to be here next year, that looking at that we should be building a cushion into our plans so that we're not always having to scramble to make sure our plans are funded. And I know, looking at the numbers, looking through the memo here, that we're a long way from being 100% funded on all these plans.
Thank you, Representative Nelson. And I did, and my apologies, but there is a testifier from the public who would like to testify on this bill. Mr. Heller, if you could just come up to the testifier's table and identify yourself for the record. Thank you, members, for staying. We're almost done. We're wrapping this up. Mr. Heller, if you could identify yourself for the record and begin.
Yes, people on the committee here on pensions and retirements. My name is Rick Heller. Unofficially represent the twice exceptional people with print disabilities. You'll find that in Senate File 2694. And for the print disability, you'll find 5222 on that language. First of all, the legislature, thanks to Mr. Nelson here, in 2019, we spoke about the Dodd Act. I believe that's what he was frankly talking about, the pension and having that little cush piece and outcomes. I don't know if the Dodd Act is being considered on how much secured pensions you're going to have. But that is still a metric that's in federal law. So going above it, that's going to be a choice of your leadership. One thing, I want to emphasize one thing. Because Nelson was involved in the 1962 bill in the 2019 session on accessibility, and the legislature is going to try to be compliant in October of this year. House files XXXX are not appropriate. They are not fully accessible. The data analyst, Jim, at the LCC wrote back. I had forwarded to the chair. I'd asked the document be posted online. But the whole thing of this is, if you're going to continue to use XXX bills, and specifically he expressed bills don't become fully accessible until they get on the floor in HTML, not a PDF. If you're going to get serious about things, I think even though you're not compliant, and you're not,
your own analyst that was been hired by Ms. Urick expressed that. I think it's important, as you got a great summary here on this. One of the things is when, like, the last bill you had under item 6, not this is item 7. I don't know if those bills are the same, but one wasn't introduced. I believe the Representative Nelson said he had it jacketed, but it wasn't introduced yet. It's going to be up to this committee about how you want to apply accessibility for the remainder until October. I think you can create your own rules if you choose to, and how you implement potentially what Senate and House does, because the accessibility report that came out in January of 2023 was silent on rules for accessibility, how these commissions and committees function. So without creating a bill and having discussion for both the House and Senate. The other one is the transparency piece. You think about transparency, these documents are posted on a data practice commission. If the legislature exempt from data practice law from a letter from the Attorney General, which is Chapter 13 in open meeting laws, how we, frankly, without having the Data Practice Commission weigh in on this, which does not have a sunset, they asked for public feedback about transparency for the legislature. 3 years ago, Ryan in the House spoke about asking for public feedback for transparency. You know, if we don't have a continuous improvement plan for transparency, how to improve this process, I just don't, it's one thing to have an accessibility policy, and even though the report was silent again on the Senate and House rules, it was also silent on transparency. So I'm just going to leave this.
I'm going to ask you to maybe wrap up, because this doesn't pertain specifically to this bill, but I want to acknowledge that your concerns are extremely appropriate. And I think that in all cases, we do our best to ensure that we want bills to have numbers. We actually, and ourselves as a commission, we generally don't like to hear bills that don't have numbers, but we also know that there are important bills based on number of bills getting drafted. Sometimes that's not possible. And so that's why those XXX do show up, and that, well, but I hear your concern. And I understand that you have been working with LCPR staff on potentially on some ways in which we could improve on this process, but with the short time we have to hear bills, there are just some times that it is difficult for us to actually have numbers ready before we have the bills heard. So thank you so much for expressing your concern. And
just one suggestion.
Quickly,
if this is so complex, you might suggest, because you're expressing many things in words, but an infographic perhaps might help this process out for the public to weigh in on it as well. Thank you again for this opportunity to speak.
thank you,
and
Mr.
provide these
Heller.
suggestions.
Appreciate your continued advocacy for individuals who are choice exceptionals and those who may not be able to look at the way we post materials online. We thank you so much for that. So we do still have to take a vote on this, and so Senator Frentz, but there are no additional comments or discussion from the group. If you want to renew your motion.
Madam Chair, I renew my motion that the language coded revisor number 24-08106 be recommended to pass and be incorporated into the omnibus pension and retirement bill.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed signify by saying nay. And the language coded revisor 24-08106 is recommended to pass and will be incorporated into the omnibus pension and retirement bill. Thank you, members, for your time tonight. That was very long, but appreciate it. That concludes our business for today. Our next commission hearing will be on Monday, March 8th at our normal time at 8:30 a.m. We will be considering and constructing our omnibus pension and Members, if you could just quiet down, Representative Wolgamott, I just need you guys to quiet down so that they can actually hear what's going to become next, and that's going to be recorded, that we will be considering and constructing our omnibus pension and retirement bill. Seeing no further business in front of this committee, this meeting is adjourned.